Have you ever wondered why everything around you seemed to fall apart, yet you were still standing? It wasn't by chance. There was a reason for every silent battle fought, for every tear hidden behind closed doors. While the world didn't see, heaven saw it all. Every hard choice you made, every painful no, every sacrifice, none of it went unnoticed. While many chose golden shortcuts, you remained firm on the narrow path. Your strength didn't come from the absence of struggle, but from resilience in the midst of chaos. The battles no one witnessed, they were real and they were yours. You won without an audience, and that is rare. That's why you are a real threat to the darkness. Because when it would have been easier to give up, you kept going. When it would have been more popular to give in, you stayed faithful. There is something within you that the world has not yet understood, and perhaps you don't fully understand it either. But the time has come. Heaven does not waste pain. Every season of waiting, every apparent delay, every rejection was actually protection. They were precise detours, sacred redirections. What you thought was failure was God hiding you, not because of weakness but because the world wasn't ready for the greatness you carry. Isaiah 49 verse 2 speaks of being a polished arrow kept in the quiver. That is your story. You were not forgotten. You were prepared, shaped, refined. Not in public but in secret, where deep roots grow far from view. Now the page turns. What was hidden will be revealed. Not for entertainment but for purpose. Not for vanity but for destiny. The time has come to remember. To remember who you are, not just by name but by identity. What the world tried to silence, heaven is now reactivating. You were protected from traps that looked like opportunities. God delivered you from alliances that looked perfect but were disguised bait. Even the moments of doubt were, in fact, divine discernment. What seemed like hesitation was wisdom shielding you from disaster. Like Lot, many chose what looked fertile. But you, like Abraham, trusted the promise. And for that you will be honored. Your inheritance is not in fleeting brilliance but in what is eternal. You may not see the fruits yet, but the seeds are already alive. The invisible is about to become visible. The silence was soil. And now comes the sound of the answer. This is the moment. Not an emotional appeal but a spiritual calling. An awakening. Something inside you already knows. This isn't just another message. It's a reminder that you've been marked for something greater, from the beginning. You didn't get here by accident. You were led, chosen. Every step, even the stumbles, was watched by heavenly eyes. You survived battles that even your own heart doesn't fully understand. And now heaven says, rise. Not just as someone who was touched but as someone who was called. As someone who knows there is a place prepared. No longer to wait but to step into. Sometimes what seemed right to the eye was actually a disguised detour. You encountered paths that promised fulfillment but hid soul exhaustion. Relationships that wore the mask of comfort but stifled your growth. Proposals that shined on paper but carried invisible contracts, demanding your essence in exchange for approval. Many around you seemed to be for you but only loved the version of you that didn't threaten them. They encouraged your progress as long as it didn't surpass their shadows. Some even used the language of faith, the appearance of truth, but their intentions required you to perform, to be quiet, to fit in. They wanted to mold your calling to fit within their limitations. But something inside you refused to be shaped by those voices. You stayed silent when everything in you wanted to react. You chose wisdom when pride wanted to prove a point. You gave up the argument to protect your peace. You turned away, not out of cowardice but out of discernment. That calm intuition, which you couldn't always explain, was the hand of God guiding you. And yes, you doubted. Thought you had missed your chance, that you were too slow, too careful, too sensitive. But today, looking back, the story makes sense. What felt like loss was deliverance. What sounded like rejection was actually redirection. Doors that closed, they were shields. Connections that never bloomed, fences against subtle poisons. Projects you abandoned, ambushes disguised as progress. And no, this wasn't luck. It was obedience. even without understanding, even without a map. Your sensitivity was your armor. Every denied yes, every swallowed response, every restrained impulse, all of it built not just your character, it built a wall chaos couldn't break through. You weren't wasting time, you were being positioned. Like Esther, who was hidden until the exact time, you too were preserved, not forgotten. The isolation that hurt so much. It was holy isolation. God was shielding your purpose from being contaminated too soon. Your caution saved parts of you that are now going to be vital. You didn't chase after what sparkled. You didn't give in to urgency. You weren't led by emotion. You were guided with quiet strength by something much greater. And heaven saw it. So understand, what is coming now is not just a reward. It's the consequence of everything you resisted. Every hard choice that no one applauded. Every time you chose the narrow path when the wide one was easier. You didn't just avoid a mistake. You survived a spiritual sabotage. There were subtle traps designed to delay your promise, drain your energy, distort your vision. And you passed through them. Not without wounds but with faith. Not unscathed but strengthened. Now your vision is clearer. Your spirit is steadier. Your story sharper. You were defended, not rejected. Strengthened, not left behind. And what lies ahead carries the weight of everything you had the courage to leave behind. Discipline almost never makes noise. It doesn't arrive with spectacle, doesn't demand a spotlight. It's subtle, constant, quiet, showing up precisely when it would be easier to give in, to quit, to act on impulse. It was in that silence that you remained. While everything around you screamed to speed up, to prove something, to take control into your own hands, you chose to wait. While urgency knocked at the door, you chose to obey the soft, steady voice within you. The same voice that whispered, "Not yet. Wait. Trust." Jesus was also pressured in the desert, not with pain but with shortcuts. "Turn these stones into bread," the enemy suggested. "Force God's hand." But he resisted. Not with power but with the word. And that's exactly what you did. Maybe not in physical deserts, but in sleepless nights, in quiet decisions, in days when waiting hurt more than any wound. You didn't take shortcuts. You didn't seek easy ways. You chose truth over speed. You chose consistency over visibility. While others chased what was immediate, you were there digging deeper, establishing roots. And yes, it was hard. The silence felt too long. The solitude at times, almost unbearable. But it was there in the dark that your strength was refined. Hebrews 12 verse 11 reminds us, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace." And you are beginning to taste that fruit. What you carried as restriction was actually construction. What looked like delay was divine camouflage. While others seemed to prosper in the eyes of the world, you were being shaped by the Spirit in unseen places. Your refusals became a shield. Your silent no's became a sword. You didn't just resist temptation. You became a threat. Because your obedience wasn't passive, it was war. Heaven recognized your resistance as courage. While many confused busyness with faith, you demonstrated faith in the waiting. And God saw. He saw when you prayed instead of complaining. He saw when you chose silence over self-promotion. When you walked away without applause. When you rejected shortcuts that looked like answers. The world didn't see, but heaven witnessed it all. You thought you were being left behind, but in truth you were being positioned. Like Elijah under the tree, exhausted and out of strength, you too felt forgotten. But like Elijah, you were not abandoned. You were hidden, protected, prepared. As the wait was long, as the cost was high, you wondered if it was still worth it. You questioned if obedience still mattered in a world that rewards haste and appearance. But still you remained. Something inside you, not loud but persistent, said, "Stand firm. Don't give in. Don't chase after what shines." And that was the Holy Spirit. You didn't know how close the attack was. You didn't see the traps disguised as promises. But God saw. And your faithfulness in dark times, your firmness without recognition, became a language heaven understands. True trust. What's coming won't require just talent or strength. It will require the kind of solidity that's only built in hidden places. The kind of faith proven when no one is watching. The kind of character that endures not because it's strong on the outside but because it's structured on the inside. And now the time has come. Not because you asked but because God saw you were ready. What was birthed in silence will now be revealed. Not for your glory, but because He decided you are worthy to carry the weight of what's coming. You didn't just survive the test. You became a portal of stability in the midst of collapse. Your faithfulness built walls against chaos. Your discipline prepared space for heaven to move. And all of this began in silence. You didn't break. Not because it was easy but because you chose to remain firm when everything in you begged to run. You held the line when relief seemed more accessible than faithfulness. And for that you were protected. That silent pause that no one understood. It was a shield. It was God Himself fighting for you. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14 verse 14. What looked like inactivity was actually a heavenly strategy. Your stillness, your silence, your refusal to engage with what was shallow. All of it was sacred resistance. You didn't bow. And the spiritual realm felt that. While the enemy was setting traps disguised as opportunities, you didn't give in to the appeal of easy doors. You didn't take the bait. And because of that, what seemed designed for your downfall collapsed before it could even reach you. Now what's coming upon your life is not urgency. It's fulfillment. Not superficial shine. It's holy construction, born from real surrender, rooted in deep convictions, not fleeting ambitions. Humble yourselves under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time. 1 Peter 5 verse 6. If you've ever wondered whether your hidden decisions mattered, yes, they did. The unseen tears, the silent no's, the boundaries you kept, they were all recorded. And now the dry ground beneath your feet is about to bloom. That day that seemed like just another in your silent battle was, in truth, a turning point in the spiritual realm. Because you didn't respond to the attack. You didn't retaliate. You chose to hold on to peace instead of revenge. And that shut doors the enemy wanted wide open. While you felt exhausted, invisible, maybe even forgotten, heaven was moving on your behalf. Words spoken against you lost their force. Traps didn't catch your feet. Because you stayed in position even in silence. You didn't fight with noise but with surrender. Your spirit chose to stay even when your soul wanted to run. And that stillness was stronger than any reaction. It was divine strategy. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. Isaiah 30 verse 15. Your strength came from the place few can remain. Rest. The enemy was counting on your haste. He hoped desperation would make you chase what only looked good. But you didn't move. You made space for God to act. Even when weak, you held your trust. Even when alone, you didn't give in. And like Hannah in the temple who wept before God, you prayed in anguish but didn't give yourself to emptiness. 1 Samuel 1. You had days like that, when you could have lowered your standard, negotiated your character, taken shortcuts. But you didn't. And even if no one noticed, heaven did. That invisible day became an eternal landmark. One of the greatest victories of your life. You chose what was holy, not what was fast. You preferred integrity over approval. You kept your hands clean and your heart steady, even when others were cutting corners. There was no post, no stage, but there was testimony. Silent. Authentic. You weren't trying to look right. You were aligned with heaven. And that alignment is what's opening doors now. Not because you earned it, but because God saw He could trust you with what is sacred, with what carries eternal weight. Just like Joseph, betrayed, slandered, and forgotten, yet he never lost his posture. And it was precisely his integrity that promoted him. Your hidden discipline became your elevation. Your restraint was your key. What you didn't take, didn't say, didn't accept, that's exactly what preserved you. You forged a legacy in the secret place. A testimony built on invisible faithfulness. And now the doors you were waiting for are opening. Not because you shouted for them, but because you were ready to carry them with reverence and fear of the Lord. What's coming is not the result of public performance or performative faith. It's the holy and natural fruit of what was cultivated backstage, in silent deserts, in decisions only God saw. You didn't get here by accident. What you carry now wasn't won through applause. It was formed in the silence. This faith that sustains you today was warmed by tears, refined in secrecy, and built on choices no one saw. This isn't about a deserved blessing. It's about a life surprised by the faithfulness of God. Because true trust isn't born overnight. It's forged in slow processes, in empty rooms, in the space between the prayer prayed and the answer not yet arrived. It's shaped when obedience feels like sacrifice, when heaven seems silent, when everything in you screams for escape. And yet you stay. God never asked you to be popular. He asked you to be faithful. He honors those who say yes, even when there's no audience, no recognition, even when nothing seems to make sense. And that posture, your posture, is what marked you. It set you apart. You didn't just avoid the fall. You allowed heaven to shape you. You didn't just say no to sin. You said yes to sanctification. You let the fire transform you. You let the delay produce discipline. And that silent decision became your portal to favor. So don't be surprised when alignment begins to appear in your life naturally. When doors open without you forcing them. When opportunities come in proportion to the foundation you built in silence. This isn't coincidence. This is the fruit of consistency. What's coming doesn't stem from human approval. It's not the result of self-promotion. It's heaven's response to the burdens you carried without complaining. To the silent yes you gave with no one watching. God saw it all. And now it's time to walk in confidence. Not with pride, but with the peace that comes from knowing who's guiding each step. Because you discovered something the enemy tried to keep hidden. That his power collapses the moment you choose not to react. That the storm loses strength when you decide not to run. The enemy tried to wear you out. He sowed confusion into your hope. Sent distractions disguised as promises. But you remained. You didn't trade your convictions for comfort. You didn't swap your faith for shortcuts. You stayed. You stayed pure. You didn't lose your posture. And that shook hell. Not because you shouted, but precisely because you didn't need to. Your stillness was your strategy. Your silence carried spiritual authority. You chose obedience without evidence. You chose to remain when everything said to retreat. Be still and know that I am God. You knew. Even when it hurt. Even when it seemed like nothing was happening. You knew who was in control. While the enemy waited for your collapse, you were putting down roots. He mistook your calm for weakness. But in reality you were becoming unshakable. You weren't just called. You were conditioned. Not just raised up, but established. You weren't moved by applause, but by conviction. Your foundation wasn't emotional. It was eternal. Every small act of obedience was a declaration. This one cannot be manipulated. This one doesn't trade conviction for convenience. This one honors the word above circumstances. Talent can be imitated. Performance can be rehearsed. But a life built in silent integrity is rare and unbreakable. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, but meditates on the law of the Lord day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season. You became that tree. The flames meant to destroy you refined you. Rejection became redirection. Closed doors were acts of mercy. Every delay was disguised protection. You weren't deceived. You were preserved. Your discernment was activated in solitude. And now hell knows you're not just a target. You're a threat. Not because you shout, but because you persevere. What you built in silence cannot be torn down. You are the kind of believer who lives the word even when no one is watching. And that's why now what once felt stuck is beginning to move. You crossed the dry season with more grace than you realized. You walked through uncertainty, through silence, through waiting. And now revelation is near. What once confused you will begin to make sense. The time that hurt you will begin to align. The dreams you thought had died will begin to bloom. God is going to show you why He delayed you, why He hid you, why He removed people and closed doors. He was protecting you. Every no was actually a yes to something infinitely greater. And if this word spoke to you, if it touched your heart, leave a comment. I choose to remain. I want to pray for you, for your journey, for this fertile silence that's been growing deep roots. Don't forget to share this message with someone who needs hope. What's being born now isn't the fruit of performance, but of faithfulness. And heaven is ready to surprise you.